Welcome, everyone. Welcome to episode 6 of Humans on the Verge. Oh my God, we're 6 episodes in. How can that be? But it is. It be. As you know, I do the episodes after I've interviewed or had conversation with someone. I do an episode following that where I personally, how else would I do it? Professionally unpack, publicly unpack. I'm thinking of my dad right now and his euphemisms. I personally unpack some things that were brought up, that were teased, that were possibly touched on during my conversation. And this month, my conversation was with Stephen Aizenstat, who is the founder of Pacifica Graduate Institute. He created a deep active imagination process called dream tending. He's got a book about dream tending out. He also, that's an old book, but he has a newer book out that is about the deep imagination matrix, the imagination matrix, which is part of a lot of what we talked about in our conversation. And so today, I thought I would talk a little bit about my own adventures in the deep imagination and the dream work I do, and a little bit more on my take on all of this and how I define it, how I sit with it, how I understand it, and what I grapple with it. If you listened to the episode with Steve and I re-listened to it a few days ago, you can hear me helping people to kind of hold a space for, the rational mind versus the non-rational mind. And I do that because I come up against, within myself, and of course in the world too, plenty of people who have completely given up on the non-rational, in a sense that the sacred or religious or spirituality is a bunch of hogwash, and it is, delusional on some level. As Freud, this is why Freud and Jung split up. They split up over this exact thing. Of course, being someone who studied psychology, I think about Freud and I think, oh yeah, seeing the whole world through only the sexual lens. Oh, that's real rational, Mr. Freud. But Freud saw religion as, this kind of pablum of the masses, right? Whereas Jung understood that, of course, but Jung had some really direct experiences with what we would call the numinous or the sacred or the non-rational or the collective unconscious. And those of you who study Jung and know about him, you know all about the Red Book, which I brought up a little bit in my talk with Stephen. And the Red Book is Carl Jung's exploration of this other aspect of psyche that we normally don't entertain. We entertain it in dreams, or but then we go, oh, balderdash, that's just a dream. And so it is this it is this relationship with image and dream and deep narrative and the collective unconscious and archetypes, the beautiful things that Joseph Campbell introduced us to, the story underneath all the stories, right? And why do we have these patterns that we think into, these archetypal stories and archetypes in general, which, that goes way back to the Greek philosophers of archetypes with Aristotle and Plato and Socrates and all of that. So, oh my God, I just unloaded a lot of stuff in that first little section there, but this is kind of the area we're in. But I want to go a little deeper and a little more personal today, and just kind of unpack this from my own place. So, one of the ways I think about this stuff is that there are two planes of being a human, And when I mean planes, I mean like actual ways in which we kind of function. And it's a metaphoric example, but there's the horizontal plane that we live on, and that's the day-to-day waking life. That's the modern world. That's the societal world. That's the physical world. That's certainly the world where computational and propositional knowing happens. And when I use those two words, computational, so like computer, adding, that kind of stuff. Propositional, using logic, these are all important things. But this is the great gift that the Age of Enlightenment gave us, right? That the scientific method gave us, this way to make equations of things, to use scientific method to test propositions, things like that. And I'm not an expert in this at all, but I've been kind of reading and studying and watching some stuff, watching a lot of this gentleman, John Vervaeke, on YouTube and his Awakening from the Meaning Crisis. He's a cognitive scientist, and he goes fully into this stuff, and this is all important stuff. But that horizontal way we look at the world it flattens the world, right? There's black and white. There's just black and white in that world. There's winners and losers. There's good and bad. It's dualistic. It's dualistic. But we have to function in this world. we absolutely have to function in it. So we operate a lot in that world. What happened with the Age of Enlightenment, kind of what the baby that got thrown out with the bathwater, was this other aspect of being in the world, which is the vertical axis, which is height and depth. And it's one where we are more, it's more of the embodied knowing, the perspective knowing. We're able to take on perspectives. We're able to look even at the dualistic perspective from a transcendent perspective, right? So the perspectives, we're going up and down, means that we get to change our perspective. And so we're all the way at the very top is the transcendent, which some people would call spirit. It's where spiritual, right? All the way down into the depths, as a depth psychologist, into the depths of our soul. This weird word soul that is confusing and has 10,000 definitions, and certainly does have a religious definition to it. But in general, depth psychologists see soul as an embodied sense of self, a participating sense of self. We're participating. Our senses are alive. It's not just our thinking mind, but it's our feelings, our sensations. We feel a physicalness in soul, and even when we feel like we're having a soulful experience, there's some embodiment. I mean, think about the term soul music, right? Soul food. There's something hearty and home and belonging and embodied in that. So you can feel the difference in all of that. And so, like I said, we live in the horizontal plane. That's how we function. And yet we're always having these vertical experiences. Being in nature helps us connect to the vertical, right? Because we can be present if we allow ourselves to be present. So presence in and of itself is a moment where we stop in the horizontal and we pause so that we can connect to the vertical. And it's kind of that sweet spot where the two lines meet. I am here. I am now. I am present. I am home. You can feel the landing of that in your own self when you take a breath and and the thinking mind kind of goes away. It's still there, obviously, but it's something is added to it. There's a presence mind also, a mind just beyond the strategy or the tasks at hand. There's other intelligences that come on board, other ways of knowing. And it is those other intelligences intelligences, and knowing that, like I said, was the baby that was thrown out with the bathwater during the Age of Enlightenment. Because we rejected this idea of Abrahamic religion and reworked it, it's still around, obviously, but some other level of consciousness was found, which was this ability to stand outside of that view and look at things from a more objective point of view. And because we threw the religion out, for the most part, most of us, and really it's kind of the air we breathe now, this more rationalistic way of seeing. It is the air we breathe, and so it is hard for us to connect to this other plane, this more vertical plane, because we've rejected our one path to it, which was religion, and was about believing in this kind of omniscient, omnipresent being called God. We were no longer in day-to-day relationship with it. And therefore, thus the meaning crisis that John Vervaeke talks about. We are in a meaning crisis. We don't know what it all means anymore because we don't have someone telling us what it means anymore in that sense, or framing our meaning for us, right? And science is important and essential, and thank God for it. We have medicine, we have rockets, we have all sorts of things. And we have imbalance too, but without this ability to connect to this other ways of knowing, we are kind of left meaningless, and we get nihilism, and we get cynicism from that. And there's a lot of writing about this stuff and all that kind of stuff. I mean, like I'll try to remember to write some of the books that I've been reading, and some of the definitely some of the Vervaeke stuff, so that you can dive into this if you want to. If you want to geek out with me, I've been really geeking out on this stuff lately. So, like I said to Stephen in the conversation we had, I went to Pacifica. I studied depth psychology. Always been fascinated by what makes us tick. And certainly the unconscious, what's in our personal and our collective unconscious, makes us tick. And, I think just, my genetics, is it nurture versus nature? I don't know. It's yes and always. I'm a person who's curious, really curious about the world. And this was my path to understanding it. And I grew up with Ram Dass's book on the thing, and my parents, took acid and did some meditation, and we all did the New Age crap. And not all of it was crap, but a lot of it was. But really what the New Age was trying to do was trying to reconnect us to this vertical axis, right? And trying to connect us to ultimate reality on some level. And so because of that, I was very curious. And then, like I said in the last episode, about 7 or 8 years ago, I went to a weekend that Stephen had and watched him do dream work, and really decided to go in and study with him for 3 or 4 years. I was in a group that studied with him to really understand how to drop down into this other way of seeing. And this other way of seeing is not new, as he and I spoke of. Shamans have been doing it. It's trance work. And then certainly people who take drugs that expand the mind, psychedelics, whether it's cannabis or psilocybin or LSD or some of the other drugs people are using these days, that kind of gives you access to the non-dual way of being in your brain. There's something to be learned from that state, because it taps us into the vertical. It taps us into the transcendent, where we see our lives and the world from a much bigger perspective. That's one of the first things you get, especially with drugs. And you also make connections, and you integrate, and you see meaning in the smallest things, at times, most ridiculous things. I remember being on a mushroom trip in my 20s, and my friend and I being absolutely absorbed in a gold chain for, I don't know, probably 2 hours. And the meaning of life was in that thing. It was just all the connections were made. Of course, when you come down from the drug, then you're like, oh, I'm here. And there's not a lot of integration that goes on. And one of the issues, I think, with the current movement is people kind of off the street are being trained to take people on journeys. They're doing a 6-month certification. They don't have a lot of psychology background or counseling background. And there's not a ton of integration work. And integration takes a long time. It takes a long time for us to integrate our relationship with new images, new ways of seeing. Because the minute we wake up or the minute we stop the dream work, or we've finished our dream tending, the ego snaps right back to the horizontal very quickly because the whole world around us is in the horizontal. And unless you're living on a deserted island or you're in an ashram or you're in a monastery or you are a hermit, it's pretty hard to stay connected all the time to the vertical, and probably not necessary because if you were only in the vertical, that can lead to people, psychotic breaks, not really being able to function in reality at all. So we need both. It's not like the one's better than the other, but the balance of the two is where the sweet spot is and the beauty is. But it's hard to stay there. And so one of the things I learned with Stephen was this practice we call the dig. So I'll get into that in a moment, but there are practices. This is why people do meditation every day, to tap into the place where we can witness the horizontal mind, the strategic mind, the dualistic mind. We can watch the narrative and the chatter and all of that, where we can ascend to a more transcendent, sometimes non-dual space and watch it. So that's what, and a daily practice is important to that. Same thing with artists, any musicians, painters, writers, any kind of musician that you are, or any kind of practice that you do where you access this non-dual, curious, deep imagination place. I reach it when I'm on a horse. My strategic mind is working a little bit, but I'm really embodied and trying to have a conversation and trying to make things happen in this other way. So anyone who does this kind of practice where you find yourself in flow state, you understand what it's like to leave the horizontal, go into the practice, go into the music, go into the paints, go into the writing, whatever it is, and disappear into it. You're kind of you're in a different mindset. And if you're in too much of your horizontal strategic mind, you can't drop down in. And that's really what writer's block is. That's what any kind of block is for an artist, is we're stuck in horizontal mind. We're stuck in comparison, inferiority, superiority, winners, losers, good, bad, all that stuff. And we've forgotten how to drop down. So dropping down is so important for any kind of work, but it's also important for our personal relationships, to be really present with each other, right? And to no longer be in strategic mind with each other, to really not be in our stories so much, but to really be together. So this movement from purely horizontal into the vertical, back into horizontal / vertical. This is good stuff. This is stuff that will make your life feel more connected, more meaningful. You're going to feel like you're more connected and to yourself and to what's authentically you and to what is real. And that's such an interesting little word, real, because I think that's where we get bogged down with provable reality. And the thing is since the beginning of time, we we didn't care what real was. I mean, we were just in it. And then when the Age of Enlightenment happened, suddenly there was this other reality. Oh, that's real because I can measure it. And then we got quantum physics. And we got this way of and I'm just a person who just scratches the surface of that stuff. But it basically is the questioning of reality and ultimate reality. And one of the things that I like about John Vervaeke, who I mentioned earlier, is that he talks about what's real. And one of the things, the first thing he talks about in real is just the way we kind of use the word. And he talks about how he asks his students, he's a professor at University of Toronto, if would you want to know if your girlfriend or boyfriend or whoever, whatever gender you are, was cheating on you or not? And most people raise their hand, like 95% of people raise their hand. And he asks why. And they say, oh, because otherwise what we have doesn't feel real. It's not real. And so there's something important about that things have to feel real. And I know that a lot of people who come to me and do my work in my Humans on the Verge coaching program, coaching world, we use the word authentic, which is just such a mamby-pamby, horrible word, but there's really not a better one. I mean, maybe real is the better one, but it's one of these ones that you can't really pin it down, right? It's like, I know authenticity when I will feel it. I know there's something in me that knows what that feels like. And the same thing with real. Real, something feels real. And that horizontal plane feels real, but it also feels very superficial because it is superficial. It's literally not deep. It's not profound. So we balance, we're balancing all of this. And so my portal into understanding what is real and really getting curious about that and wanting to play with what Carl Jung played with in his active imagination through the Red Book and the little bit of dream work I'd had. And of course, some really powerful moments in my own life where I had connected to something transcendent and deep at the same time, because that's how that works on that vertical plane, something numinous. I've had these numinous moments in my life, which Jung talks about, like that's kind of the quality of what happens when you're encountering something that is sacred, this term sacred, which there are some cognitive scientist people really looking into this right now. It's kind of exciting time that us depth psychologists, Jungians aren't, people just to kind of roll your eyes at. But people are really thinking about this stuff, trying to figure out what is ultimate reality. So I just wanted to share with you today a little bit about what I've learned and why and how I use this work and what it does for me. And I'm going to use a little example of just what happened to me this week with it. And I have to say, bringing this to a public forum like this and a public conversation or a monologue, but I feel like I'm conversing with every single one of you, is vulnerable. Because there's a part of me that lives on the horizontal plane and worries about people rolling their eyes at me or not thinking of me as intelligent because I have these experiences, or that I'm just a magical thinking like a child. And these are all things that have been thrown at me over the years by some pretty hardcore, staunch atheists, and that's fine. But what I do know is that this participatory sense of knowing is real. Cognitive scientists study it. And this perspectival, having a perspective different from the horizontal, is also real and is really essential for human evolution, actually. So I know it's real because I've experienced it in the sense of real, like it affected me and it feels tangible and important, and it helps guide me in understanding, kind of like a North Star, helps me understand what is good and true and beautiful, those ideals from Aristotle and Plato and Socrates. And therefore, it grounds me in a sense of knowing that is important to my life and brings meaning to my life. So I'm just going to walk us through a little bit about how we work with dreams and even just how we work with this thing called the dig that Stephen and I talked about in our conversation. So with dreams, when I do dream work with people, or I watch Steve do it, and a lot of people who do dream work, there's lots of different ways to do dream work, but I'm talking about the way that Stephen Aizenstat does. This is called dream tending. It's different than analysis. So what we do is we walk people through a dream, and there's a story. There's usually a story in a dream, right? And the way most analysis goes of dreams, which is the way most people do it, is I want to know and understand what this dream means about my current waking life. And rightly so, because dreams comment about that. We are processing our daily life in our dreams, for sure. And so that's like the first level we always do. And I'm not going to go into a dream. I don't have a dream today. I'm going to talk about my dig later. But that's the first thing we do is, like, oh yeah, I'm going through a time where there's a lot of uncertainty and this thing's bringing up uncertainty in the dream, or, you can usually tell, like, oh yeah, this is about my marriage, or this is about my work, or this is an anxiety dream I'm having, but we want to know what it means. And we absolutely do that in the dream tending. Like, let's walk through that. What does this have to do with your present life? And that kind of satisfies the horizontal part of ourself that wants to know, like, how do I fucking function in this world? And what is this dream? How's this dream going to help me function more and strategize and get through the life? Very important. And then people have the other layer, which is like, oh, there's all these figures or these objects or these animals or these themes in it, right? So I want to look up in the dream encyclopedia or the dream dictionary, which there are plenty of them. There are these things that kind of help you with the archetypal meaning of things. And oh God, Joseph Campbell and mythology and, you can go through it, tarot and, all sorts of different systems for understanding symbols and all of that. And it's very rich and it's important because symbols are, they're metaphor. They're ways in which our unconscious is non-verbally communicating to us, right? It's a symbol. It's through a picture. It's through a representative of something that has meaning. So a lion could be a courage, right? A bird could be something that can transcend. A snake can mean death and rebirth because snakes shed, right? These are all these archetypal things around these things. And so then we look at the dream and the objects or the animals or the people or even the situation through kind of a symbolic lens. And we get some more information. And that helps us get a little closer to the vertical because the symbolism is part of that vertical thing. It's not the exact thing. It is metaphor, right? It's simile. It's the use of and dreams are metaphor. Like dreams love a metaphor. Dreams love a pun too. Like, sometimes there's words that we say in the dream and it can be a pun, really fun to deal with. But then there's this other level. And we use both of those things and we get some understanding about it. And then the next level of what we do is we drop down. We take an elevator down. So thinking about that the vertical axis, we take the elevator down. And we do that through, we've talked a little bit about your dream. We've helped you get into the dream. And so we actually invite you to go back inside the dream. And we do that from the beginning too. So we've already primed you and we get you to kind of close your eyes and it can happen very quickly. For most people, boom, they're back in it. And that activates a very different way of being and seeing. The dream reality is different. It is not in the horizontal. We are now in the depths of your unconscious. It's a portal. It's like a little elevator called the dream that came from the unconscious, and we're going to take it back down there. And from there, we then look at things and encounter things in a very different way. We're not using our analytical mind to grasp and understand it from a logical, rational place, but we are looking to be in relationship with it and to let ourselves see through the lens of those in the dream. And the biggest perspective difference in this space is that I, the ego of the dream, and I, Kelly, the ego of this person, I'm not the leader in the dream anymore. That I'm allowing whatever is in the dream, whether it be objects, figures, animals, even the landscape, I'm giving it intelligence. I'm affording it intelligence, wisdom, and autonomy. That it has shown up in this moment for some reason. There's some part of my psyche that the ego part of me, the daylight part of me, the horizontal part of me doesn't know. And it's bringing information to me. Now, some people could contend that is still just a part of the personal psyche, sure. But I think Carl Jung does a great service when he talks about the collective psyche, that we're all connected to it through archetype, through narrative, all of that. And so there is this rhizomic, we mentioned this in the conversation, this rhizomic network of intelligence, because we are part of nature. And I don't understand this, and scientists don't understand it, but the quantum field, right now it's like, okay, am I taking two metaphors, trying to mush them together? Possibly. There are greater minds than me that think about these things. But there is a lot of curiosity about this. But even if it is just the personal mind or the collective unconscious, and it's not connected to some ultimate reality, because I don't know if it is or not. Even if it is, just by taking the stance of affording something outside of you, intelligence and autonomy, that ultimately is a integrating and healing force, a connecting force, that in and of itself is a powerful healing. To be held by something that is bigger than us. People call it a God or higher power, but think about 12-step programs. There's a power bigger than this ego. That's all we're really ultimately talking about here, just to begin with. And so when we go down to that realm, we experience somatically in our bodies. We have different ways of connecting. We have different ways of seeing. And we learn. We go on a journey and we learn and we see things. And I have to say, when Steve and I talked about this in our conversation, there is a automatic integration. There is a automatic perspective shift that is very deep, and it is beyond the conscious mind. And it does take some ritual around it when you come up to integrate it into the horizontal plane, because the horizontal plane, like the Matrix, will try to get you to take the pill where you forget who you actually are, right? That's what the whole Matrix is about. So you have to stay connected to your real, there's that word again, your real self. I talk about it in my work as the true self. So on Monday, I've been in a very dark place the last couple of weeks. And part of it is that I took one layer of my armor off, my day-to-day armor off, which was my emotional eating a little too much sugar, having a beer every night. Life has been very chaotic for us collectively since certainly November of last year. Very much so. Starting in January here in Los Angeles, we had the fires. And then, of course, we had the new president. It's been very chaotic collectively. So I've been emotionally eating since last fall. I was in Italy eating a lot of gelato. It started there. And so I decided to stop that because I really wanted to just get back into right relationship with eating, which is something I do usually at least once or twice a year. And so I'd stopped doing that. So I took off a layer of my, you could say my horizontal, something that helps me conduct myself in the horizontal plane, which is, being a busy career woman and being an entrepreneur and blah, 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 blah. And I was using this habitual way of eating, which is an unconscious way of protecting ourselves. So I took that armor off. And I've been feeling very, very dark, a lot of dark mood coming. And I knew I was just processing some stuff, and it was probably that. But I really had to kind of deepen into that. And I really did see that I was in the middle of a bit, as we all are, a bit of an existential crisis. And for me, part of the existential crisis was tapping into this brokenhearted idealist aspect of myself, this perspective called the brokenhearted idealist. And I've been, one of my struggles, my personality struggles and my own complexes is that I grapple a lot with, who my dad was and versus who I am, and separating that and connecting and trying to do it in a healthy way. And my dad was that too. He was a brokenhearted idealist and talked about that a bit, and it's in the documentary certainly, and I've written about it in my memoir. And I was really coming to terms with that, and how my generation, I was born in 1963, how the Gen Xers, we were sold peace, love, and understanding. And boy, it feels like that's losing right now. And so really having to deal with that. So being in that place with all of that. And so Monday, I had not done a dig in a while, got busy on the horizontal plane as people do. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to do a dig. And especially after I listened to our conversation together. And that was like, yeah, I really do need to do a dig again. And so I did. And part of the thing is where I normally go in my imagination, when we do a dig, we kind of have a doorway or a portal or a place we go in our imagination that kind of sends us off on our way. And we meet some figures that we've met in dream time, that have come to us in dream time, have come to us also through dream tending. When we dream tend a dream, sometimes a spontaneous figure will show up. It'll be a healing figure of some kind. So I have my little roster of people that I work with. But some of them have been kind of absent lately. And part of it has to do with, I think, the trauma of the fires. Because one of my places that I used to go as my portal for dream tending was Will Rogers State Park. And that had the fire came through it. And that's where I've been riding horses and been going there for 50 years of my life. I'm actually writing about this right now, and I'll share it with you guys at some point. And so my portal is like in trauma right now. It's like it's burned. I haven't been back there yet in physical horizontal time to be with it. So I have another place I go, and I went there and wasn't sure if anything was going to happen. It's another place here in Los Angeles that a neighborhood I used to live in when I was a teenager and through my 20s, and then my parents lived in this neighborhood. And I would go there, and in my imaginal realm when I was there, it wasn't quite exactly like it is in the horizontal realm. But I went there, and one of the places I go, it's up a canyon. There's like a spring in my imaginal realm. I don't know if there's a spring there. Sometimes there might be a waterfall there during good rains, but there's a spring in my imagination, which is such a potent image, right? A spring, right? Renewing, ever renewing life force. Hello. And this time I go, and sometimes I go up there and there's all sorts of imagery going on. But this time I went up there, and this was the morning that I found out the Pope had died. I went up there, and there was this Jesuit priest he had made like a sanctuary for himself. And I'm certainly not Catholic and certainly not religious, but I've always kind of liked the Jesuits. They're kind of, of all the Catholics, they're like, oh, at least they're like really intellectuals, and and they believe in rational thinking and philosophy, and a lot of great Jesuit philosophers and stuff. And he was like 50 or 60 years old. And what was so interesting was when I entered this space, I did the little personal thing, like, oh, what am I looking through that lens? And the symbolic, of course, he was kind of a hermit, someone who was kind of connected to the sacred. And then I really dropped down and I just went into the space with him and let myself sit there and be there. And what entered my body and mind in that moment was a feeling, and one that I don't necessarily connect to a lot because it is religious in nature and it is even Christian in nature. But the only word I had for it was this sense of wholehearted mercy. And that this Jesuit really embodied this. He was merciful. And he was here to bring mercy. And my whole body drank it up like I had been in the desert for a long time, and the waters of life were offered to me. And of course, my mind connected to the fact that it feels like right now there's so little mercy in the world, that the people who we see and hear about in power in so many places are merciless and are not unconditionally merciful. If they have any mercy, it's only for the people that they pick and choose. But this monk, this priest, whoever he was in my visual, was absolutely unconditionally merciful. And I don't have any illusions about the Catholic Church or anything like that. But when when Pope Francis, well, first of all, he picked Francis as the guy to be named by. But, I would watch him like wash people's feet and encounter people. And this was I saw mercy. I saw like he really tried to live in that place. He tried to embody that. And I think that's really the job of the Pope would be to do that. And so it was just an interesting thing. And so this brokenhearted idealist that I definitely am, not all of me, but is a perspective that I step into and can feel very deeply, was able to be met with mercy. And it wasn't like like a magic wand, and it wasn't going to take away my broken heart, and it wasn't going to take away even my desire for the ideal to be lived out in and into. But the brokenhearted idealist is really so interesting because it really does hold the tension of the opposites. It holds the ideal, and it also is able to sit with its own brokenheartedness, because there is no ideal. We are humans. We live at the crossroads of the horizontal and the vertical. That the ideal is the transcendent, right, is the vertical, and then there's the human that lives in the dualistic, brokenhearted, full-hearted, all of that. And so I was able to enter a space of mercy for the human condition, for the world, for my own broken heart, for the darkness inside of me that has been activated, that felt very lost and very alone. And even though it is an imaginal figure, this priest who lives in this imaginal sacred space in this imaginal canyon and deep inside of my psyche, I allowed myself to just be in the presence of him. So I allowed myself to participate in a somatic way and be present as it feels like to be present in the presence of anything real, in our lives. And I allowed the perspective to be real, to enter and to hold a different perspective than the one I had been locked into, the despair, the depression, the grief for the world right now. All of these are important emotions to be able to be into, because they do drop us down into our soul work. when we're able to walk through the valley of the shadows, to feel the grief. Grief is the great leveler, you guys. Grief is the work where we actually do visit archetypally the underworld. Grief means something is dying, something is lost, something will never be the same. And that is true about life. The horizontal modern world wants us to believe that that's not true, that we can be young forever, that we don't die, that the planet is not dying, that technology will save us. Everything we do on the horizontal is important and real. Like I said, medicine and technology, these are all good things. But if we're not connected to our grief and loss, and let ourselves have a merciful space for that, where we can really be held in it, we will not make real, authentic choices for ourselves personally, and we won't make it for our humanity and for each other and for this planet. And so this practice, this dig that I did on Monday really opened up something inside of me, allowed me to see in a broader way, allowed me to feel less abandoned by the big electron or whatever you want to call it, by the wholeness of life. Maybe it's ultimate reality. I don't know. But whatever is bigger than me, whatever is the big conversation we're having. And it has allowed me to also let go of some of my own crap, my own complexes that live in the dualistic world, superior, inferior, all of that kind of stuff. Because aspects of ourself like mercy don't ask you any questions about to enter its space. We're not living in the horizontal in that moment. We're not having to make judgment calls, rational judgment calls. We are in an unconditional space, which then we can bring up to the horizontal plane and be guided by that more and understand and let that inform our day-to-day decisions, what we fight for, what's important, and not be stuck in black and white thinking. So that's my unpacking of that today. I hope my bringing an example forward helps understand. I hope this brought you some ways to play in your own life. Some things I want to invite you into is if you're interested in dream work, you can tell your psyche that you would like to remember your dreams. Put a journal next to your bed before you go to sleep. It's very helpful. And before you go to sleep, it might take a few nights. It might take a few weeks. Say to yourself, I'd like to remember my dreams. Even if you don't remember dreams, let yourself stay in that dreamlike space in the morning before you enter the horizontal plane. Let yourself stay there a bit more. Let yourself notice when you do drop down, whether it's in nature, maybe you do some meditating, whatever it is. Let yourself know that you have portals to the horizontal. You'll know what that feels like. Your heart will open. The chatter in your mind will calm down a little bit or a lot. And you'll have access to metaphor and images that might not seem logical, but do not worry. They have been brought to you for information to help you connect to your wholeness. And if you want to learn more about this, I will put some links down into the show notes here so that you can link on them and learn more about this kind of work. And if you're interested in doing this kind of work with me, I certainly do it in our World of Humans on the Verge. I do it in group ways, in some group calls that we have. I also do it in individual dream work. So you can always connect with me. My public Humans on the Verge email is kelly@humansontheverge.com. I'll also put that in the show notes. And you can go to humansontheverge.com and check out our website. So I hope this kind of expands your thinking about it, or if you already have expanded thinking about it, I hope you kind of dug how I talk about it and how I see it. And I'm going to have more guests on where we talk more about this vertical access and accessing it, because that's I really do think that is the key to us awakening from the meaning crisis that we're in, and also finding a way to navigate the chaotic and complicated times we live in. And here's the news. It's not going to get less complicated, and it's probably not going to get less chaotic. So let's use all of the tools in our toolkit and access all of our intelligences that this amazing human mind affords us so that we can navigate the landscape together. And like I said, there are great scientific, intellectual minds working on this integrating of the vertical and the horizontal, which is exciting times. It's what I've been studying for 20 years. It's what I try to, talk about in my own life. And it's what I'm starting to write about also more. So you can check out my Substack, which is called Story, No Story. If that interests you, I'm going to start putting some pieces up there more about this work. All right. I could talk forever. Do not want to talk your heads off. Thank you for your attention today. I really, really appreciate it. I know there are so many ways and things that take your time and your attention and that are important, and so many ways that want to steal it from you. So I never want to steal your attention. I want you to know that I appreciate it and I value it deeply. So have a beautiful week, month. And our next episode, I'm very excited about. We talk with a woman who is a neuroscientist about curiosity and tiny experiments. So I look forward to sharing that with you in a couple of weeks. And be good to yourself. Take some time, love yourself, and bring some mercy to your heart and to the world. All right, I'm heading out. See you later. Ba-da-ba-ba-da-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba